Hi there. This is a recording for my students and graduates of the Life Celebrations and Funerals Training. So an integral part of our process together is this section I call the order of things. And I've obviously done this training now with a large number of people. And I do like to constantly review the content and the way I deliver it. So I felt that this was such an important section, and some of you had asked such good questions that I wanted to include the answers to, that I would put it all together here as something you can go back to, download, or just watch from the link. And hopefully it will prove helpful as you gain more confidence in developing your own order of things and making this work for you. So I'm going to take you through the 25 steps. You have got these in your workbook, but it just feels right that I've made some slides highlighting each one with kind of a few key points on each. Now, step one, the very first thing that happens, and certainly early on in our work as a funeral celebrant, almost all of the work we get is likely to come from a funeral director. And often we will get a call from them while they're actually with the family. I have shared an example and I'm going to share it on this recording because it really is such an important learning for me. I got a phone call, it was a Sunday, and my lovely local funeral director called and said, "Hello Dinah, I'm with a lovely family who sadly lost mum on Friday. We were wondering if you might be able to help by creating a service and then taking that at the crematorium for us a week on Thursday." Now I said, as I think I always do, "Oh, Sue, I'm so sorry to hear that news. Please pass my deepest condolences to the family. I'll take a look at my calendar. Yes, I am available on that day, Sue. I'll block out the whole day now, and you can let me know some more details when you're back in the office. Again, please do pass my condolences to the family and I will speak to them soon." Now, normally I would expect then the next bit of contact to be that Sue would have emailed me when she got back to the office. But on this particular occasion, literally 15 minutes later, my phone rang. And Sue was in the car and she said, "I wanted to let you know what just happened." The family had actually said when I got there, Mum wanted a humanist funeral, please. And so, only having one humanist celebrant on her books, Sue had called that person and said exactly what she'd said to me. "I'm with a family who sadly lost Mum on Friday, wondering if you might be able to take the service a week on Thursday." And his response was, "Hold on a minute, let me look at my calendar. What time is it? Because I've got one at 11 and one at 4, so potentially I could squeeze him in between the two." Now, firstly, if that's really how you ever feel about doing a funeral or a life celebration for somebody, please step away. Please stop being in this role because that's not what people need at this time. And it is entirely and absolutely disrespectful. Secondly, learn from the grave and awful error this man made. Because what neither of us actually knew, but for me it made no difference, was that we were on speakerphone. Now, funeral directors will often put you on a speakerphone because that family is going to be relying on you to tell the story of their loved one, to be the person who leads a celebration of their life. So if they don't like the sound of your voice, that's not going to work. So they're not trying to catch you out. They're trying to say, "This is what this celebrant sounds like. Does that sound to you like this could be a match?" But just bear in mind, you might very well be being listened to by that family. So show some compassion, be thoughtful, put the date in your diary, and if you're going to take this service, block it now, because if you're anything like me and there's a button on your website to allow people to book things in, if you don't block that calendar straight away, somebody else could suddenly have double booked you. So make sure that's confirmed and then wait to hear again. The funeral director is likely to say to you in that first phone call, I'll send you the details when I get back to the office. Step number 2, confirm that meeting. I like to call that client pretty much as soon as I get the email from the funeral director, if that's practical. Obviously, if it's late in the evening or if the funeral director has said, they've had a bit of a heavy day today, give them some space, maybe call them, tomorrow or in the next couple of days. But otherwise, call them as soon as you can, because they are waiting now to take these steps that the funeral director has started to explain to them. Tell them that you're coming to see them, agree where, and remember that sometimes offering to do this at home is not the right thing. Sometimes when somebody's lost their loved one, they perhaps have been looking after them for a long time, perhaps they've been going to visit them in hospital. It's probable for many of us that the lowest thing on our list of priorities would be keeping the house in order. So offer, would you like me to come and see you at home? Or perhaps if you're coming into town, we could meet somewhere in town, whichever feels right for you. But give them that option. Now, I like to confirm this by email because although they've just agreed everything with you and you think it's now in both your diaries, they are in grief. And remember that they're often not thinking straight or hearing us right. And so send an email, confirm where, when, and the time that you've said we're going to meet, and then give them a little bit more information. Let them know what to expect, because when we do that, we stop them worrying about what that first meeting might be like. So I like to say, we're probably going to need around an hour and a half, but don't worry if you need a little bit longer. My diary is clear. Or don't worry if you needed a little bit less time or it feels overwhelming. We can always schedule to have further calls. And often I like to send them some suggestions of how they could prepare for this meeting. And I have shared an example in the backup paperwork for this presentation, an example of how I do that in an email. Step number 3, you're going to see this a lot. Keep the funeral director informed. We've got a list here of 25 steps. Well, if you add a 0 to that, you're kind of getting close to all the things they're having to do to organise this service. So don't be the step that keeps coming up. Let them constantly be aware, oh, look, that fabulous celebrant we're working with yet again has kept me in the loop, kept me informed, let me know that they're doing what I've asked them to do. I don't have to chase them up. And the easiest way to do that here is that when you email your client to confirm, I'm coming to see you and here's how to prepare, copy the funeral director. Now, 2 things happen. Don't make it a blind copy, make it a public copy. You've updated the funeral director, but you've also let your client know, oh, good, my celebrant is keeping my funeral director in the loop. I don't need to keep getting in touch with them and confirming everything. So they also have one less thing to do. Step number 4, you're going to meet the family for the first time. Now, I believe this is one of the most important steps, and we're going to take a few minutes on this. Just have a cup of tea. We're going to take a few minutes on this because this is so important to get right. I say quite a lot over our time working together that this is not about us. Well, this is one of those times where it really matters that we're very present and that we remember that showing empathy does not mean sharing our own story. It's about being there to support this individual or this family who are deeply in their grief at the moment. So I put together a little client visit pack. Now, my suggestion is that it includes this information: support information. Do you remember in one of your first homeworks, I asked you to create and if you're watching this in advance, you can get ahead here and start on this. I asked you to create a kind of database of local support, be it charities, be it government organisations or professionals that you know yourself, people who are out there to take that next level of support with this family, people who perhaps know and understand very specific situations. So take that information with you. It may be that that's a database that's in something you carry around, but if you know certain information is really relevant for a family, compile a short list and consider including that in your pack. I like to always take a copy of the Celebrant Accord with me. Now, again, you don't actually always have to leave that with the family. We're all trying to do the right thing and print off less, but I have a copy of it with me so that I can talk to them about what they can expect from me. It is absolutely essential that we let clients know what we're going to do with their data. And so you need to give every client a copy of your privacy policy. Now, I take this with me, but I also now have started attaching this to my email when I send my first lot of something I've written for them. So, for example, the outline of the ceremony, I will also attach my privacy policy. It's also available to read on my website, but we are obliged, when we're storing data like we do about these people, we're obliged to make sure they actually have had a copy. I take some poems and readings with me. There are a couple of books that I often just pop in my briefcase. Donna Ashworth regularly is one of them, but there's a couple of really beautiful books of kind of compilations of poems. I personally have also printed a short document which has 10 of my favourite funeral readings and poems in. And then the other thing I do, and we haven't come to this in your training yet, but we're going to talk about this, is that sometimes all the questions we are ready to ask, the loved one is not yet ready to answer. They're feeling really overwhelmed, and we may spend 20 minutes with somebody and think, today is not the day. If I sit and just go through my questions with them, I'm almost being a little bit abusive. I'm certainly not showing compassion or empathy. So I have some questions in the form of a very gently and carefully crafted questionnaire, which, when I feel it is appropriate, I can leave at a meeting with the family. And I'll say to them, today is clearly not the day, and that's absolutely fine. I've got some questions that I wanted to ask and I printed them out. So if I may, I'm going to leave them with you. You take the next day or so and look through them. If you're able, note down some answers, and when I come back, we can go through those together. Or if you don't feel up to doing it, have a look, and then I'll be back in a couple of days and we'll get the answers done together. The point is, you're letting them know this doesn't have to be instant. And if you are not in a place to talk today, you don't have to. The one thing that is very helpful to do in this first meeting, if you can, is to get the kind of order of service, and that includes the music, confirmed. Now, when I say the order of service, it's going to be really simple. We're going to welcome everybody. I'm going to read, or Uncle Fred is going to say the eulogy. We're going to do that photograph and piece of music we agreed. I'll say a couple of poems here or a reading for committal, and we'll end with this piece of music. It's as simple as that. the order in which we will do the basics, not the detailed content of what those basics are. And the reason we need to confirm the music is because often the venue where we're doing this, particularly if it's a crematorium, need to know a certain number of days in advance. And it's the funeral director who is likely to have to tell them. So get that to the FD as quickly as we can. And again, we're making everything easier for everyone. Step 5. You're going to send that brief outline. And the reason we send an outline is really so that what they've said to us, they now get to see. And often, going back to how people can behave in grief and how it affects us, when they read it in order for the first time, it kind of helps them go, yes, that's right. That is what we were hoping for. Or it makes them say, oh gosh, look, we totally forgot that we wanted to include something. We forgot to tell you about it. So aim to send this to them within 24 hours of your meeting. If you've got the time, go home or go to your office, get it typed as an outline and send it straight away. And you're saying to them, can I just confirm that I heard you, that I understood what it is you want? You can include a couple of suggestions for poems or readings if that's what you've talked about, but don't go into detail of how you're going to say things. This is absolutely like a bullet point list. First, we will do this, then we will do this, all the way through. Send that to them and ask them to confirm, have I got that right? I'd like to start writing the service, but I can't do that until you confirm this is okay. Step number 6, we're going back to getting these music choices confirmed. Now, when they tell you we'd like whatever the piece of music is, you need to be absolutely clear about who it is by and which version. Often it's a really helpful thing if you can say to a client, do you have Spotify or YouTube or something like that? Could you share the link to the actual version you'd like us to use? And they'll send that to you. You can forward that to the funeral director and everything gets confirmed. When you confirm it with the funeral director, copy the client in, because again, they now know, okay, yeah, you heard me. And I don't need to worry about this anymore. It's in the right hands. Step number 7, always get everything confirmed with your FD. And this time it's that basic order of service. So they've come to you and said, yes, we're happy with the order you've suggested. Go to the FD and say, I've got a draft outline for your order of service now. Always make sure they are the one who's actually doing it. I have yet to be asked to do it. Funeral directors often have a very good relationship with a local printing company, so they will be getting all that organised and confirm those music choices at the same time. So step number 8, that minor little detail of writing the script and sending it. It's important to remember when we write scripts, and I know at the moment it feels very new to you, but it's important to remember that we can't take anything for granted when it comes to what the family know or don't know about the type of service we're creating for them. So I like to put in almost stage directions so that the family can see what they're supposed to do. So, for example, at the very beginning of my script, it will say, hearse arrives at crematorium. FD and celebrant greet family. FD to explain to the bearers what their duties are for the day. Everyone will gather in the atrium. The bearers, under the direction of the funeral director, will carry in the coffin. I will lead the procession into the chapel. Guests will follow the coffin, which will be followed by the family. Family will then take their seats to the front and right. Other reserved seating may be indicated. Once everyone is seated and the coffin is on the catafalque, that's the name of the area it's placed, I will start the service. So they've got this full description now that says this is what will happen when we arrive. I would then include exactly which pieces of music we have agreed, and in brackets, I always include how long that piece of music is. Now, part of the reason for doing this is because families often feel when they read our scripts, oh, but it's so short, I want to say more. I want us to acknowledge another piece of this person's life. And, you know, they're right. The services have to be much too short quite often. But by letting them see, look, 14 of our minutes have been taken up by music and we've only got 30, they will begin to see the restrictions and understand why we have to be very careful about how many extra bits of wording can be put in. I always time myself reading a script out loud before I send it to a family so that I don't make any kind of faux pas. I want to make sure always that I leave at least 4 or 5 minutes so that if they come back and say, actually, there is something we really wanted to add, I'm almost certainly going to be able to do that without having to say, well, then we'll have to take something out. And I like to give the time frame by which it would be helpful to hear back from them. So I say, please take a day or a couple of days, depending on how long we've got until the service, to review the service and then give me a call or message me with your thoughts. Often they like the idea of having a conversation to review the script together, and I'm always really open to doing that because we get to hear if there's something that perhaps they're not saying or that they're trying to explain in a way we missed the first time. Step number 9, get an approved email or message confirming, yes, we're happy. We like what you've done, or yes, we're happy with what, this version of the script, please use that for the service. I always say to them when I'm getting confirmation, please, rest assured, this does not mean in any way that if you think of something right up to the night before, I'm not able to change it, because I am. This is about us always having a version that is what we've both agreed is the current version. Every time we make amendments, send them an updated version and say, in your header, that's where I tend to put it. Document name doesn't need to change then. Change the header so that it says Life Celebration 4, last amended on, and put the date that the last changes were made. And never ever say, please find attached your final version, because that implies, I said we could change things up to the last minute. Well, we can't. You've done it now. You've had your lot. And that's not how we want to behave. So always latest version or version amended on and the date. Step number 10, keep your FD informed. Yes, I know you're getting used to this now, but it really is so important. So confirm that your family or your next of kin have confirmed they are happy with the script, and let them know about anything that really is important. For example, how are we ending? Do we need them to come in at a certain point? So I may say at the end of my script, music to exit, and you list what it is. Note to FD, please come in and open doors after 2 minutes. or please don't open doors until music has finished. Those kinds of things matter. And at this point, I also confirm the timings again. I confirm, am I going on my own? Am I traveling with them? I will be there 20 minutes ahead of time, blah, blah, blah. Keep them informed. Now, step 11. It doesn't matter how often you have done a service at the venue. Always confirm that nothing special is going on or has changed since you were last there. We learned this the hard way during COVID, where literally day by day regulations were being changed at crematoriums and cemeteries. So just pop on their website or give them a buzz if you've got a good contact. Anything special happening this week, anything I need to know about. They may even have roadworks going. You just need to know that you have actually, that you have actually checked those details, and as a result, you're not going to have a problem last minute on the day. The worst one that happened to me was, and thankfully I had checked, was I was told, oh yes, the car park's being re-tarmacked that week. You're going to have to park at the bottom of the hill and walk up. Now, that's not an option for me. I have issues with my mobility. And I had to say, well, how am I going to be able to do a service if that isn't an option? They said, oh, it's fine if you come and can be dropped off at the door. You just can't park. So I organised to go with the funeral director that day, and it wasn't an issue. Step number 12, practice and practice again. So I tend to practice every script 3 times, and I schedule them into my diary so that I do always have the time available to do a rehearsal. You can do a rehearsal on the day if you are giving a ceremony in the afternoon, but personally, I've learned I do better when I don't rehearse on the same day, partly because if I make a mistake on the day, that's now in my memory. But also because it rests my voice. I like to do at least one dress rehearsal. And yes, I literally mean full on, put on your outfit, play the music, do everything, even pause and time how long it would be if somebody else is doing a reading. Always do your rehearsals aloud. There's no point in reading it through in your head, because that really will not help you to hear how you're coming across. And when you think you're speaking too slowly, slow it down a little bit more. And as I've mentioned, in at least one of the rehearsals, play the music. One of the reasons for that is really simple. If you're anything like me, the music might tug at your heartstrings. So make sure you've heard it before you hear it in the service. Step 13. The day before the ceremony, it is a really lovely idea to just give your client a call. Let them know it's okay. I've got this. I'm organised. Everything's ready. The FD and I are really, working together on this. We've got your back. They're probably not going to sleep tonight, or if they are, it's not going to be great. But just knowing that you've said it's okay, we've got our bit covered, is just one less thing for them to worry about. And don't rush this call. Just be prepared to say very little and just listen. Step 14 is to follow that up by checking in with your FD. Now, depending on the relationship you have with the FD and how long you've worked together, this could be a phone call or it could be an email. I personally always just drop an email now to most of the FDs I know well, because most of them are out doing services or are with families, and I don't want to have my call jump to their mobile and now they've got another message to listen to. So I drop them a quick message by email saying, spoken to our client, this is how I'm getting there, or this is how I'm getting to you, confirming again the timing, and just also saying, if there's anything changed for you or you need to get hold of me, these are the rest, this is the rest of my day. for you to contact me should you need to. Step 15, it's now time to print off your service. Now, we're trying to save paper and not print. Personally, I'm not yet ready to read this off a screen. I find that quite uncomfortable. But if that works for you, that's wonderful. However, I would encourage you to print a copy for your client. Even the greenest of us, there is something tactile and soothing about a physical copy of the service for your loved one. So I would really encourage you to think about doing that. Print off your own script in as big a text as you possibly can, and a copy for your attendant at the crematorium, if there is one, or for the funeral director you're working with any instructions for them very clear on that. Yes, I'm actually telling you to make sure your outfit is ready. I know you're not 5, but just make sure everything is ready the day before. And remember your name badge. We're professionals. I have a name badge from the Association of Independent Celebrants with their logo on it. If you are now a member, wear that badge. If you've not yet become a member, consider getting a badge made that says your name and independent celebrant on it, because people do want to know, was that a friend of the family? No, that's a person who does that for a living. That's their profession. Step 17, I like to get there, if I'm not traveling with the funeral director, around 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Take some time, breathe, be aware of where you are. You're not out of breath, you're not flustered or overheated. And if I can, I like to kind of go in via the office and just say hello. Ask one of the attendants when they've finished, when the previous ceremony is finished, could you possibly take me in and just go over the controls with me? They like doing this. You are not being a nuisance. So ask, could you take me in, show me my podium, show me which buttons to press for the curtains? And of course, if you now have a music system, could you just quickly show me that that's set up? I place my script at this point on the podium and leave it there. So now I have my hands free. And that matters when our client arrives, and now we can be present and greet them, give them a hug, shake hands, whatever is appropriate. Step 18, hand that copy of the music list in the right order to the attendant on duty. And what I tend to do, if they're doing the music ins and outs for you, give them a summary of kind of the last 2 lines that you were going to use before the music is due to be played. And it gives them that little cue. If you're in control, if you're, for example, at a crematorium like we have at Llanelli, you will have what looks like a mini iPad set up on the podium. Make sure on the screen that the music is in the right order, because this is your last chance, if they've made a mistake, to say, excuse me, you need to change the order of this because it's stacked to play in the right order. Step number 19, speak to your client. I'm always astonished when the sort of funeral cars arrive and you'll see the celebrant either get out or is already there, and they just stand there looking important. Well, you're not important. It's not about us. And your job at this moment is to make sure you make that client who you've been working with feel reassured and know that you're there and that you are in control of everything you've agreed with them. And the way you do that is just by going with the FD often to the car, and as they get out, give them a hug. Say hello. How are you doing? Something that shows that you are present and you're there for them. You may need to help them walk in. This is a really difficult moment. Step 20, lead the service. Now, we are going to talk about this again, But this really means these key points. You absolutely cannot go over time. If you are at a crematorium and you go over, you can be fined and you can be told that you may not run a ceremony at that crematorium again. So absolutely keep an eye on the time. There will usually be a clock on the wall facing you. Check where it is when you go in to place your folder. Make eye contact with those members of the family that you've met throughout the service. Take a moment whenever you can and time yourself at a pace that allows for this so that you can allow everybody to have the time. Don't rush. When a family says to you, yes, we'd like to do the photo carousel in the middle, we'd like that piece of music we chose and some photos of our loved one, please stand in a place where you can see that screen and look at the screen. Sitting down or sitting, standing at your podium, fumbling with your notes, not acceptable. You need to be ideally stepping away slightly so you're not in the main line of sight of everybody there, and do the right thing. Turn and look at that screen. Enjoy the pictures. This is the person we're all here for. And go to the family before you leave. Depending on what you have all agreed, some families will say we want to leave first, some will say we want to leave last, some will say we'd like to leave with you, please, because we really are not sure how we're going to be feeling. Whatever you have agreed, make sure you go over to them as the service ends. Usually I try and do this during the piece of music we're putting on for ending or exiting, and just take a minute. Step 21, go outside, get to a spot where you can encourage people as politely as possible to kind of leave the building and move away from it, and be gracious. We're absolutely rubbish at accepting thanks or compliments. People may well compliment you after a service. Just say thank you, or I'm so pleased that you found it comforting, or it was a beautiful service, wasn't it? I was so grateful that the family shared those stories with me so that I could write it. Because it's not about us, but it is that we have just delivered something that helped these people in some way. So acknowledge it. Step 22, give the family a copy of the service. And I always take this with me to the ceremony. Make sure that you give it to them on the day, because they're going to find that comforting. This is that tactile thing they can hold on to. I personally put this in a cardboard folder, which has my branding on it. And I do that because then they know in the future, oh yes, that's the folder that mum or dad or my loved one's ceremony is in. I print it on nice quality paper, and I usually print a cover sheet that's, yes, of course, done on Canva, but kind of says Life Celebration 4 and maybe the date of the service. Step 23, follow up with your funeral director. Normally I do this 2 days after the service, because by that time they're likely to have spoken to the family, and ask them, were the family happy with what I did? Is there anything that I could have done better so that I can help even more the next time? And let them know if you enjoyed working with them, and tell them why. They need feedback too. But by saying to them, it was a real pleasure to work with you, I hope we get to do that again, you're reinforcing this was a mutual experience that was great. Let's make sure we work together again. Step 24, I like to speak to my clients around a week after the service. And I often kind of use the excuse of just wanted to check whether you needed any more copies of the service, Would you like me to send you something electronically that you could print off? But I'm also following up to make sure they're okay. And a simple, how are you doing, is often all that you need to ask. And just be prepared to listen. Step 25. I like to follow up with my clients around 3 months after the service. And mainly that's because I've learned from experience that from what they've told me, at around 3 months, it's gone very, very quiet. All those amazing friends and community who supported them have had to go back to their own lives. And it's not that they don't care, they care very much, but they no longer really know what to do or what to say. And so often our client is now feeling a bit lost and isolated and sad. So a follow-up to say, you've been in my thoughts, how are you doing, can matter enormously. I, with several of my clients, have started sending the amazing book Loss by Donna Ashworth. It's a collection of poems for you as a survivor, the one left behind, you know, the person who's in mourning. Survival is not the right word. You are the bereaved. That's the word I was looking for. It's a beautiful book. The words are just remarkable. Donna seems to somehow see into people's souls. And sometimes I just put a copy of that in the post with a little card saying, you're in my thoughts. So, before our next training session, please will you make a list of any questions you have after watching this video. It'll give us a chance to talk through them, and I hope I can answer them all. And I suggest that you try and turn this list of points, the order of things from 1 all the way to 25, turn this into a 1-page kind of tick box list for yourself. Have I done this? And I use this with every single client I work with. Now, the more techie amongst you may well make this into some kind of app or spreadsheet. I'm very tactile. I like printed versions of things when I work with clients. So I quite literally have a load of printed sheets ready, and I fill in the client's name, the date of the ceremony, which funeral director it is, and then off I go with my list. And of course, I also put all the dates in my Google Calendar as tasks to remind me that I have to do this. I hope you found this helpful. I have taken this entire section out of our one-to-one live sessions to allow me to spend a bit more time answering some of the points that each of you had brought up. So I hope you have found this a good use of your time. It does also mean that we can spend longer in our session together working on what happens during that first meeting with your client. And that's what we will be doing in our next session if you're watching this as a new client. If you're watching this as somebody who's already completed your funeral training, nothing has changed in the list. This is still exactly the same list. I just wanted it to be available because I felt it's such an important part as something that was the same for everyone. So thanks, folks, and I look forward to seeing you in our next session.